Hello and welcome everyone to week 2 of 2 for the Daily Creative Challenge. We're going to be on challenge 6 today. Good to see everyone. Hope everyone had a good long weekend. We are going to be doing some light and shadow today. I'm really excited for this challenge. If you want to join in on these, let me show you where you can do that. You can do that over here on the landing page at behance.net/challenge/Photoshop. You'll see at the top there is the big blue button here. You can click to register and join us. And if you scroll down, you'll see our challenge today, light and shadow. You can click get started to get the starter files. You can click watch video to watch any of the previous replays. They're all saved. And also we have a Discord, community Discord if you want to post your designs. If you want to get feedback, give feedback. We got mentors working in here with Valder, with Ted, a lot of people giving feedback. And you can kind of check through here and see all the designs people have been posting. I've been super impressed by it. I've been really excited to see all the coloring, the line drawing challenges. And if you want to ask questions, we have a section for that here. Actually, let me move over so you can see this panel better. The challenge section here, ask a question section down here. So definitely join that if you want to kind of get feedback for all these challenges. Good to see everyone. What's up, everybody? Afrosia, Frank, Cody Bear, Clarissa, Valder, Judith, Umacorn. I saw Ted in there, Sean, Mercurial, Jennifer, Susan. Everyone's here. Fabio, what's going on, everybody? Welcome on in. So let's jump right into it. We got this today. I'm going to talk about light and shadow. So this should be a lot of fun. I kind of want to show you different techniques I often use to fake lighting, to fake shadow, to adjust it within a scene, because a lot of times, you know, you're dealing with the stock photos you have or the photos you took, and they don't always match perfectly. Now, we have talked about this quite a bit here and there throughout previous challenges, but I wanted to do a bit more of a deep dive today and show you a little bit more of the tools I like to use for that kind of thing. So I got this little stock image here, and I added this hat separately. So sometimes, you know, you may add accessories onto a character or anything like that when you're compositing. And it's fun to see what you can kind of do with the shadows and everything. So first off, I'm just going to cut him out. I want to separate him from the background like we always do. I'm going to select my quick selection tool, click select subject here at the top. And I'm not going to try to clean this one up. This is just a quick demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and mask that out with the little button down at the bottom right under the layers. And actually, let me move my face away from her. There we go. So you can see my layers. So now we have him removed from the background. I'm actually just going to merge the hat with him. You can see I just masked out part of the hat so his head fits under it. So I'm going to merge those together so we have one asset. All right. So let me show you some of the tools I use to light objects and scenes and everything. I really like to use multiply layers for shadows. I sometimes use exposure layers for shadows as well if I'm darkening something down overall. But I really like being able to paint in shadows a little bit more like freehand and creatively with a multiply layer. So let me show you that. I'm going to bring this multiply layer down to my basketball group. I like to group my layers to keep them separated and organized, especially once I start getting a lot of adjustment layers. It really helps to have groups and name your layers. So for a shadow layer, I like to do like a 50% gray, kind of in the blue, maybe almost reddish purple tones. You can always see, you know, just paint on and see what you like. I also like to keep my opacity fairly low with a soft round brush. And that way I can just kind of do this. I'm just clicking repeatedly, get a little bit of shadow there. So, you know, I could go even darker. I like this because I can adjust it on the fly, and I don't always use a uniform level of darkness across my entire shadow, which is why I prefer it over an exposure layer for most instances. Now, knowing a little bit about light in general is really good, because if you kind of study these things and, you know, look at how the real world reacts, it really helps you get more of a realistic look. And what I mean by that is, in this instance, there may be a little bit of bounced light, so I'm actually erasing some of that off. The light is coming from the top right, as you can see, with where I placed my shadow. It would be bouncing off the ground behind the ball here on the left side and bouncing up into it. So sometimes, if the circumstances make sense, I'll put a little bounce light there. And if I put too much, you know, I can always go back in with my multiply layer. Now this lighting is already good, but a lot of times these techniques work best on very neutral lighting situations where there's not an obvious hard light and shadow. Now this one has a bit of an obvious light, not shadow as much, but I like to use color dodge layers for lighting. Sometimes I use screen, sometimes even linear dodge, but mostly I like to use color dodge. And I like this because I can select a cool light, a cool color, I can select a warm light, depending on the situation. But here I'm going to select a warm color, very desaturated, very dark. Right click that, clip it to my mask along with the multiply layer, and I can kind of boost that light if I want. I can go really crazy with it, you know, maybe there's like a fire next to it. I use color dodge layers a lot for glow, and you can see you can get really intense with it now. That looks like there's like a fire or something going on. So for this image, we don't really need it much, but I wanted to show you those tools that I like to use. Hey, Andre, how you doing? Steve, I think I said hey to everyone in the chat. Cody, our mod today. All right, let me jump into the next step here. So we got our multiply layer and our color dodge. I want to show you real quick before we move on how I create cast shadow. So I'm duplicating the ball here. There it is without the layers. I'm going to lock the transparencies, and I'm going to do my sort of multiply shadow layer here. Crank my opacity up. If I set that to multiply, from here, I still have that selected underneath. That's on the bottom layer. I'm going to hold on Command or Control, grab this middle thing here. What's really cool is you can stretch it around. So if the light's behind it, we can make a cast shadow this way. If it's from the top right, maybe we can make it like this. I can move it down so it's in the center. The ball's in the center of the shadow. Maybe rotate it. And from there, we can always do like a filter, Gaussian blur, under blur. Oh, I think it's because I locked my transparencies. Let's try that again. Ah, there we go. It's too much of a blur for me, so let's go into the blur. Gaussian blur. It's at 24. I want maybe like, I don't know, something like 8. And what I like to do from here is mask it out, create a mask, and then I can use black to conceal. I'm going to lower my opacity to get a very gradual shift. Again, this is all with the soft round brush. And there's going to be an area of ambient occlusion. We've talked about this term before, but basically where areas touch each other is going to be the darkest. So I can actually go back into my shadow layer, use a darker tone, and again, this is why I like multiply layers, because I can adjust on the fly, and just add extra darkness right where it makes contact with the ground. That's sort of the ambient occlusion shadow that we've talked about. Going back to my mask, using black to hide. I'm going to soften up the area where more light is going to be bouncing, more ambient light is going to be hitting into that far part. So it may be a bit softer. And there's my little cast shadow. Shadows are hard. Yeah, they're a lot of fun. I think just because I do so much painting and drawing, you know, these techniques are just kind of ingrained into my workflow. So these are things I use a lot, and hopefully they're helpful to you all. Fairy, Merv, what's up, everybody? So let's see here. I want to spend most of the time in the next part of this, but I want to show you how you could do cast shadow or just play with shadows with these multiply layers. So a quick way we can do this, grab my figure layer with my quick selection tool, which is hotkey W. Just going to grab the area right under the hat. Grab his whole face. And it's kind of fun because you can just paint shadows, really. I'm going to put my opacity all the way up so I can do it in quick strokes. Control H to hide the marching ants. You can make the size of your brush different, you know, for different effects. But, you know, there's a quick little cast shadow there. You can do this with selection tools, too, if you're more comfortable using, like, the pen tool for selections. Really, any selection tools. But, you know, I'm just doing it freehand with the mouse. And also right under the hat, again, where these objects meet, where the least amount of light is going to be bouncing into, we'll darken the shadow more. I'm going a darker color, just right around the edge for that ambient occlusion effect. Now, a fun thing to do, you know, is just, let's try this again. You can darken down the whole thing. I'm going to do create clipping mask again. Whoops. Create clipping mask. Click both of those layers, those shadow layers I just made. Now that's too dark. But this alone kind of looks like, you know, it's in shadow. And sometimes I just like to, you know, paint in shadow. It kind of looks like he's behind like some, I don't know, blinds, those old dramatic like detective movies or jail bars or something like that. You can have a lot of fun just painting in shadow patterns with that. So I like to do that as well. So just some quick examples how you can use those things, but let's jump into the main image here so we have enough time. So what I want to do is just have a background basically that you're trying to fit a character into. Now I already have my things cut out just to save a little bit of time. But let's see here. First and foremost, what I want to do is fit him in with the lighting of the scene. So this is the example where I want to make an adjustment layer with exposure. I won't use multiply for this. I think exposure works a little bit better for this job. So I'm going to crank the exposure down a bit. Whoops, we got to right click that layer, create clipping mask to our figure. There we go. Exposure, let's go a little darker. Maybe like 2.33. That looks pretty good. And then what I want to do next is do a color balance layer to make the temperature of this character match the scene. So maybe cool it down a little bit more. And I do that a lot with my multiply layers. That's why we select like a blue color. But when I use when I use exposure layers, I like to add some color balance layers with it. So again, I got to remember to clip it to my character so it doesn't affect the background. And maybe the midtones and the shadows will cool down. I'll adjust these blues and the cyans. You can just kind of like play around with it and see how it changes it. You know, warmer, darker, maybe something like that. Actually, no, I don't think I want to do the highlights. Let's do the shadows. Yeah, that's looking not bad. See how it cooled it down a bit? Shadows have never been my super strong point. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy this stuff. Just being able to like change an image so much to fit a scene has always been really fun. So there, we got our color balance and our exposure. Let's get into, let's do a multiply layer. We talked about multiply layers for ambient occlusion. His face just looks too bright to me. It looks a little fake. So I'm gonna do what I just did. See if I can select this real quick with my quick selection tool. Now we're not gonna have a cast shadow because of the lighting situation, right? Whoops, I had my wrong layer selected. So make sure you have select all layers on, sample all layers, or you have the correct layer selected. So I got a multiply layer, and I just want to add a bit of ambient occlusion shadow there, just for a more realistic look. Maybe I can ease off the opacity there. All right. What I want to create next is a hue and saturation layer. Do you see that lighting behind him? There's that red lighting. Well, what's kind of fun to do is if that lighting is really far off, we're not going to have a strong impact on him, right? So let's, whoops. Let's try that again without a selection. So I'm going to Control D to deselect, make a new adjustment layer. Oops, not color balance. Hue and saturation. So maybe something kind of in the red tones. But I want to make sure I select or I clip that to my character. Oh, I want to click colorize. That's the problem. I knew something looked off. Click colorize at the bottom here. Select those tones you want, and then I'm going to press get my fill bucket, and in the mask I'm just going to turn it all black. And this way we can paint it in exactly where we want it. So a little bit, you can lower your opacity if you want to be more gradual. Put a little bit of red in there from the background. Now, it's far away, so I don't want it to be too dramatic on him. Maybe a bit of that. And if we do want to crank it up, this is where the screen layers come in. So, new layer, screen layer, and you can see how it's important to keep things grouped, because once we start adding all these layers, all these layers on the clipping mask, it can really start to add up. So staying organized definitely makes my life easier. So I'm gonna color pick this background color actually, and maybe adjust it from there. But you see this, it's kind of this lighten effect. You can play around with the saturation and the brightness to see, but if I really want to push it a little bit more, I can do that for a little bit like of a glow effect coming from behind. Now it's so far off, I don't think it would do that, but you have that option if you want to kind of create a cast lighting. Let's see. Yeah, so let's make this phone light up. Let's give it a little bit of a glow. So I'm just going to create a screen. I'll just call this screen. It's not a screen layer, it's just a phone screen. And I'm going to use my polygonal lasso tool to just kind of trace this black part of the phone screen. Because these lighting effects don't always work as well if it's a dark screen like that. Can mask out his finger with the lasso tool to adjust it. Let's fill that in with a sort of bluish tone. That's good. And then from here, let's do screen layer. I should probably call one phone and one screen, so I don't confuse the two screen layers. But I can do like a blue tone here. And this is my screen layer again. You can try color dodge. Sometimes that works depending on the circumstances. But I think for this situation, screen works quite nicely. Get a little glow painted in. You can make your brush bigger for like a bigger radius there. But something like that works well. And what if we want to add a little bit of, glow on him? So I'm going to make a color dodge layer. I don't think we've used color dodge yet, but I do like color dodge. So I'm going to clip this to his body again. So I'm going to move it down, create clipping mask. And we'll try like a 50%. Color dodge is pretty powerful. So you got to be pretty easy with it. There's a little bit of light. Maybe some on his face as well. Yeah, you can play around with it, like how far do you want it. Ease off the opacity on your brush if you want a more gradual effect. Yeah, that's not too bad. Now, we could create a cast shadow for him too, but I want to make sure we have enough time for Lightroom, because we're going to be bringing this into Lightroom. So let me actually give this a little save. And we'll do light and shadow. Save that as a, do a JPEG. And let me pop open Lightroom here for just one moment. All right, so I brought over Lightroom. I just went to add photos here at the top, and I added this. So if you haven't used Lightroom before, it's really handy for quickly editing photos. Photoshop has a lot of in-depth tools for compositing and manipulation and all these things, but Lightroom is really great just for adjusting photos. It has a lot of tools that are meant for that, to do that quickly and easily. So there's all these panels here on the right. You'll hover over them, you'll see edit, crop, rotate, healing brush, linear gradient, and radial gradient. Now edit has a lot of the stuff we're going to use. So for example, exposure, I may want to tweak that a bit. I can try it up and down. If it's a bit too dark for my tastes, I might bump that up just a bit. It did feel a bit dark. Contrast, yeah, I think I could boost that up a bit. It's really fun to just play with these just to see how it affects it. There's a lot of great sliders here that quickly and easily kind of give you a feel for, okay, yeah, that's an improvement. And sometimes, I'll play around with Lightroom and not realize until after, like, oh, this was really like the exposure was off or the color was off. I'm going to leave that there. I just want to mostly adjust my exposure, highlights, and shadows, a little bit of contrast. Why bring in a Lightroom? Well, a lot of times, maybe someone doesn't have Photoshop or you just want to do some quick editing. I like Lightroom if I just want to do adjustments like you might do on Instagram or something. You want to just tweak the brightness, the temperature, all these things very quickly. I think Lightroom is very well geared towards that. And of course, if you want to batch edit images, if you want to apply the same effect to a lot of images or manage a lot of your photos at once rather than just one specific design in Photoshop, Lightroom excels at that. So temperature is kind of fun to play with, warmer, cooler. I kind of like the dramatic cools, but I kind of like it where it is too. Let's go into effects. Now, vignette is something maybe I want to play with because I was noticing there's a lot of bright space on the top and bottom. If you go negative vignette, you can get a little bit of that darkness around the edges. You see that? So I kind of like that. It draws less attention towards that bright sky at the very top. And then maybe we will do detail, sharpening. I like doing that sometimes. We can crank that up and see. I think a little bit of sharpening would be nice. And some really cool things are, there's the spot healing, which is really great. A lot of you may be used to that in Photoshop, but the radial gradients are kind of fun too. You can pull out a gradient for a specific area. You can see when you hover over it where it's masked to, and you can erase or add to that mask. But maybe I just want to brighten the face up a bit because it's our focal point. We want a little bit more attention there. And that's a really quick and easy way to do that. And I think that's pretty good right there. So, I can go and export that image, right? And we'll have our finished image. So sometimes Lightroom can be really easy if you just want to do some light editing on photos or you want to do it to a large selection you have, and I'd highly recommend playing around with it. It's very accessible. It's very easy to use. If you haven't used it before, I think just looking at the panels, it's very good at explaining what they're there for. Lightroom is like, well, I mean, in the sense that a lot of people don't want to have to go super in depth into editing their photos. So a lot of people like Instagram stuff just because there's a lot of these easy ways to adjust it. You can adjust the contrast, all the main things that people are typically going to want. Lightroom has a lot more power than that, but it's very accessible just to jump into and change your photos. I find it a little bit more, like a little faster if I'm just doing adjustments than using it in Photoshop. Photoshop I like to use for more in-depth stuff. I think that's about all we have time for. I'd like to do a little cast shadow that's coming towards us just because there is backlighting. But I want to make sure we have time to jump into the Discord here and go over some of these designs that you have all been posting. So these are awesome. Again, super excited to see these. This was the day one challenge with the masking through the landscape. That looks really good. Great job on the masking. I've been super excited to see all these. We got some color and the painterly effect by Jay Lewis here. We have, ooh, this one. I haven't seen this one. I like this. It's like little squirrel bird. Really nice blend between the neck and the body here. More cast shadows. Yeah, speaking of cast shadow, right there. Yeah, I use that effect all the time. The one that I showed you on the ball with the free transform, control clicking. I use that all the time for cast shadows. I love the textures in this. Really cool textures. It really sells like that metal effect for all these metal pieces. This is great. I like this one. Looks like I think this is the sky replacement here. Definitely like a dramatic sky effect. Yeah, sky replacement from Plabil 23. And again, if anyone wants to join these, the Discord is a great place. We got Frank posting his designs, always awesome stuff. I like this one. I like the mock-up too. Very nice sizing, like the composition. Really making this a big element works very well. A little bit of masking on the hat. Ooh, I like this, the 3D text effect. Yeah, challenge tab over here under feedback. Oh, this is great. Great blending, great combination of elements. They all fit together really well. You're all killing it. So cool. Oh man, we got a colored illustration line drawing, Fairy Warrior by Marie, doing their own line drawing. This looks amazing. This is super cool. I love these wings. And the coloring looks great too. Like this little kind of faint lighting gives it a lot of dimension. Wow. I am impressed. But yeah, if anyone hasn't checked it out, go through, scroll, check it out. I hope these tips were helpful for you today using multiply layers for shadows. You can use exposure to darken something down very easily and quickly. Color dodge layers for this lighting effect, screen layers for glows. Sometimes I swap them over. You know, I use color dodge for glows all the time. It depends on the image, but try them out. Try out different blending modes: screen, color dodge, multiply. Try out exposure adjustments, and just have fun with it. You know, try to get a character to have some interesting lighting on it, or an object, or really anything. Just adjust the lighting, play with it, and enjoy. Thank you everyone so much for joining me. I do have to run. I will see you all tomorrow for another Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. Thank you so much. Have a good one, everybody.